with an exceptionality have a mismatch with the typical curriculum, and that's true for these students too. It's not an elitist program where we're trying to find a few anointed students that we are going to give special things to. This is about finding students whose needs are outside those of the typical curriculum, and if we don't provide for them, then they will not develop appropriately. So really we're talking about meeting academic needs. We will teach them the things that other students are able to learn from a typical curriculum, which means how to study, how to work hard, how to persist. Because without a more rigorous curriculum, these students don't learn those lessons, and then they are not able ultimately to develop that potential that they have.
When we think about the field of gifted education, it can seem a little bit overwhelming, but I think it's always good to take a step back and really look at what are we actually trying to do. And the answer to that question falls into three kind of categories. Our first task is to identify those who have that advanced potential, to understand what their characteristics are and their learning needs, as well as the social emotional needs they might bring to the table. But then once we figured out who are these kids, our next step is to figure out how can we structure their learning environment so that they are in an environment that will lead them to develop their potential. So the last piece of that, or the last category, is looking at how we can produce the advanced achievement that we need and that these students are capable of producing. The National Association for Gifted Children has defined a gifted individual as one who demonstrates outstanding levels of aptitude, which we define as your ability to reason or learn in a particular area, or those who have outstanding levels of competence, meaning your performance or your achievement is in the top 10% in a particular domain. Okay, a domain is any area that has its own symbol system, such as mathematics, music, or language, or it has its own set of sensory motor skills, such as being able to paint, or in the sports area. When we think about students who have advanced potential, we really need to think about two different groups. We have those who have the advanced potential, but they also have demonstrated this outstanding level of performance. So the extreme case of that would be prodigies, children who can function at the level of an adult in a particular area. But we also have those who are just solid above grade level achievers, as well as those who might be creative producers, always having the ability to problem solve and original ideas to contribute to the conversation. But we also have a second group of learners that sometimes gets overlooked, and those, they still have the same level of aptitude or potential, but their performance is underdeveloped for some reason. It could be that they're twice exceptional, meaning they have a learning disability that masks their giftedness, and the giftedness might mask the learning disability, so they shake out to look like an average learner when they're not at all an average learner. They may be students from poverty, students who are culturally or linguistically diverse, or students who are underachieving for some reason that's unknown to us. Maybe they're having struggle at home, a mismatch with the curriculum or the learning style of the teacher and the student, some reason that's difficult for us to tease out. But our goal is to really look at those students who have that underdeveloped performance and to figure out what can we do in the classroom as an administrator or whatever our role might be to bring the level of their performance up so that it matches that potential that they have. Certainly the identification procedure that you follow will depend on your state's definition and mandate, but in general the procedure we're going to describe follows nicely with the National Association for Gifted Children's definition. Okay, if you remember, we're trying to look for students who have advanced potential or who have outstanding levels of performance. So to look for advanced potential, the best process is really to start with a norm reference measure of ability, or also called aptitude. Okay? Then to look for outstanding levels of competence, we really need to use a norm reference measure of achievement. Now, we don't want to make all of our decisions on the basis of students' test scores, so for those kids who we think have that potential, but maybe their scores on those norm reference measures were just below our guidelines for admittance into the program, for those kids we want to look at qualitative data. So maybe portfolios of work samples, recommendations, and descriptive information from teachers or parents, So other information that we can bring to the table to make sure that we're not overlooking students who are in need of gifted services.
Okay, and so what happens in the classroom? Well, it's important to differentiate the learning environment in about 5 ways. The first way is to put the students with advanced potential together for their learning. We certainly know that in sports, and it's true in academics as well. If you are with other students who perform at a high level, you have that opportunity to interact with them and raise your own performance to that same level and to contribute. They spur each other on. So the first way is to put the students with advanced potential together. They will produce the greatest achievement gains by doing that. And then the other thing is to differentiate the teacher, if you will. So the teacher needs to have training in how to provide an appropriate education for students who are gifted. Now, after the teacher has training and the students are together, then you can look at the curriculum, the instruction, and the assessment and differentiate all 3 of those qualitatively. So for curriculum, it needs to be both accelerated and enriched and have greater complexity. In the instruction, the pace needs to be differentiated, as well as the focus on critical and creative thinking throughout the learning activities that are planned. And then in assessment, you are finding ways for the students to demonstrate not just knowledge and comprehension of the material, but their more advanced understanding and ability to communicate their advanced understanding through appropriate assessment. And all of this is based upon an understanding of the characteristics and needs of the gifted child.
Gifted learners have different academic needs than typical learners. They need an appropriate education just as all students do. In the video, you heard a brief explanation of the basics of gifted education and of the services advanced learners need to develop their talents. We hope you'll look for additional resources for administrators at nagc.org.